Welcome to The Political Bridge, the podcast that dissects the most pressing issues facing our nation. Today we're diving into a contentious debate that has significant implications for our economy, our workforce, and our national identity: the Trump administration's approach to legal immigration. From proposals to dramatically reduce family-based visas to increase scrutiny of naturalization processes, the landscape of legal entry into the United States is shifting. The central question before us is whether these restrictions are a necessary measure to protect American workers and national security, or if they represent a fundamental misunderstanding of immigration's benefits and America's role in the world. Making the case for restricting legal immigration, here's Nico, the strategist.
Thank you, Jordan. The narrative that restricting legal immigration is inherently anti-American or economically detrimental simply doesn't hold up under scrutiny. My primary argument is that a merit-based immigration system, one that prioritizes skills and economic contribution, is not just beneficial, but essential for protecting American workers and maintaining national sovereignty. The Congressional Budget Office has repeatedly highlighted how high volumes of low-skill immigration can suppress wages in certain sectors, particularly for native-born workers and previous immigrant cohorts. This isn't about being anti-immigrant. It's about ensuring that our immigration policies serve the economic interests of all Americans, preventing a race to the bottom in wages. Furthermore, national sovereignty dictates that the United States, and not international bodies or external pressures, must have the ultimate authority to determine who enters and resides within its borders. This isn't isolationism, it's a fundamental principle of self-governance. We also need to uphold the integrity of our citizenship. Enhanced denaturalization reviews, for instance, are not about targeting specific groups, but about ensuring that those who gain the immense privilege of American citizenship have done so legitimately, upholding the rule of law. High immigration volumes, particularly in sectors already experiencing a labor surplus, can exacerbate unemployment and strain social services. It's a matter of supply and demand. If we have an abundance of labor, the value of that labor decreases, impacting everyone. Jordan, I'd like to hear your take on that.
Nico, I appreciate your emphasis on national sovereignty and worker protection, but I believe your framework overlooks the profound and often indispensable contributions of immigrants across every sector of our economy and society. The idea that restricting legal pathways protects American workers is a short-sighted view that ignores long-term economic realities. For instance, the National Foundation for American Policy consistently reports that immigrants are entrepreneurial powerhouses, founding 45% of Fortune 500 companies. These aren't low-skill jobs. These are companies that create hundreds of thousands of jobs for all Americans. Furthermore, the argument that restricting legal immigration enhances national security is counterproductive. When legal pathways are choked off, people don't stop trying to come. They are simply pushed into illegal channels, making it far more difficult to track, vet, and manage who enters our country. This creates a less secure border, not a more secure one. A comprehensive study by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine found that immigrants, on average, contribute more in taxes than they consume in public services over their lifetimes. This isn't just about high-skilled workers. It's across the board. We also have moral and legal obligations under international refugee law to provide asylum and protection to those fleeing persecution. To ignore these duties not only diminishes our standing on the world stage, but also undermines our values. Restricting legal immigration isn't a strategic move. It's a retreat from our economic potential and our humanitarian responsibilities. Nico, how do you respond to that?
Jordan, while I acknowledge the entrepreneurial spirit of some immigrants, your focus on Fortune 500 companies, while impressive, represents a very small fraction of the overall immigrant population. My concern, and the data from the CBO, points to wage suppression in low-skill sectors, which impacts a much larger segment of the American workforce and previous immigrant communities. You mentioned that restricting legal pathways pushes people into illegal channels. But that's a false dilemma. The solution isn't to open the floodgates. It's to enforce our laws and secure our borders more effectively, and then to implement a legal immigration system that is orderly, transparent, and aligned with our national interests. The idea that we must choose between legal and illegal immigration is a distraction from the core issue of managing overall immigration volumes. Regarding the National Academies study, while I respect their work, it's crucial to disaggregate the data. The fiscal contributions often vary significantly based on education levels and skill sets. High-skilled immigrants certainly contribute more, but the fiscal cost of low-skill immigration, particularly in terms of social services and infrastructure, can be substantial and disproportionately borne by local communities. We must consider the net fiscal impact, not just gross contributions. Your point about international refugee law is valid, but it doesn't negate our sovereign right to control our borders and determine our overall immigration levels. We can fulfill our humanitarian obligations without undermining our national interests or the economic well-being of our citizens. Jordan, your argument seems to prioritize open borders over the tangible economic concerns of American workers.
Nico, your assertion that my argument prioritizes open borders is a mischaracterization. I am advocating for well-managed legal pathways, which is the antithesis of open borders. And while you focus on the SIBO's data regarding wage suppression in low-skill sectors, it's crucial to look at the broader economic picture and long-term trends. Studies from organizations like the National Bureau of Economic Research often find that any short-term wage depression is typically localized and temporary, and that over the long run, immigrants contribute to overall economic growth and innovation, which benefits all workers. They fill labor gaps, particularly in sectors that native-born workers are less willing to enter, and they create new demand for goods and services. Furthermore, your point about the fiscal cost of low-skill immigration often overlooks the fact that many immigrants, regardless of initial skill level, improve their economic standing over time, pay taxes, and contribute to the social safety net. They are not static economic units. The aging population in the U.S. means we need a younger, dynamic workforce to support our Social Security and Medicare systems. Immigrants are a vital part of that solution. Restricting legal immigration now means we're cutting off a crucial source of economic vitality for the future. You also mentioned the integrity of citizenship, but increased denaturalization reviews create an environment of fear and uncertainty, potentially discouraging civic participation and integration, which are vital for a healthy society. Nico, how do you reconcile the long-term economic benefits and demographic needs with your focus on immediate localized wage impacts?
Jordan, you ask about reconciling long-term benefits with immediate impacts, but we cannot ignore the immediate and tangible effects on American workers, especially those already struggling. While some studies suggest long-term benefits, the CBO data I cited specifically details wage stagnation for low-skilled native-born workers due to increased competition. This isn't a localized, temporary blip, it's a persistent pressure. You mentioned immigrants filling labor gaps, but often these are gaps that could be filled by training and upskilling native-born workers or by adjusting wages to make those jobs more attractive. We shouldn't rely on a constant influx of new labor to depress wages rather than investing in our existing workforce. And regarding the immigrants pay more in taxes argument, let's be more specific. While many immigrants do pay taxes, the net fiscal impact, particularly for lower-skilled immigrants, can indeed be negative when considering the full spectrum of public services consumed: education, healthcare, infrastructure, and social safety nets. A 2016 National Academies report, which he referenced, actually found that while highly educated immigrants generate a net fiscal surplus, those with less education can impose a net fiscal burden, especially at the state and local levels. This isn't about their intent, it's about the economic realities of a modern welfare state. We must distinguish between gross contributions and net fiscal impact. My argument isn't against all immigration, but for a selective merit-based system that ensures a net positive fiscal and economic contribution rather than creating a burden on taxpayers and suppressing wages for vulnerable Americans.
Nico, your interpretation of the National Academies report, while selectively accurate on fiscal burden, overlooks the report's overarching conclusion. Immigrants contribute significantly to the American economy. The The report also emphasizes that the fiscal impact varies greatly by age of arrival, education, and state policies. It's not a blanket condemnation of low-skilled immigration. Furthermore, your suggestion that we should simply train and upskill native-born workers to fill labor gaps, while a worthy goal, is often insufficient to meet the immediate and ongoing demands of our economy. Industries from agriculture to healthcare rely heavily on immigrant labor, and without it, we would see significant disruptions and increased costs for consumers. The idea that immigrants are solely a burden on social services ignores their role as consumers, taxpayers, and innovators who contribute to the very tax base that funds those services. You also haven't addressed the critical demographic challenge, our aging population. Without immigration, the dependency ratio will skyrocket, placing an unsustainable burden on a shrinking workforce to support retirees. Immigrants, often younger and with higher birth rates, are a demographic lifeline. Restricting legal immigration now is akin to cutting off a vital artery for future economic growth and social stability. It's not just about immediate wage impacts, it's about the long-term health and dynamism of our nation. A well-managed, diverse legal immigration system is not a burden. It's a strategic asset that strengthens our economy, enriches our society, and ensures our global competitiveness.
And that brings us to the end of another compelling debate on the political bridge. Nico, the strategist, has argued for restricting legal immigration pathways, emphasizing the protection of American workers' wages through a merit-based system, national sovereignty, and the fiscal costs associated with high volumes of low-skill immigration. Jordan, the practitioner, has countered by highlighting immigrants' significant economic contributions, their role in fostering innovation, the counterproductive nature of restricting legal pathways for national security, and the long-term demographic and economic benefits they provide. Both have presented robust arguments backed by data and policy considerations. This complex issue clearly has no easy answers, touching upon economic theory, social responsibility, and national identity. We want to hear from you. Should the U.S. restrict legal immigration pathways to protect American workers and national security? Cast your vote on our website and join the conversation. Thank you for listening to The Political Bridge.